The Empty Promises of False Idols. Hi, I'm Anne-Margaret with this week's Sacred Sunday message to raise the vibration of your body, mind, and spirit. Are you in the trap of the savior archetype, thinking that someone or someone else is going to save you, save us, save the country? This talk might be a good one to listen to. This topic today was prompted by a friend of mine who sent me pictures of actually a lot of things, but pictures of people saying that this political figure was the savior or that political figure was the savior, showing images in storefront windows in New York City. She lives in New York City, of uh, pictures of like Pelosi or Cuomo or Biden, Harris, etc., on prayer candles and holy water bottles, and also messages about Trump being the savior. So wherever you're on the political spectrum, it makes no difference to me because you are entitled to your own viewpoint with that sovereignty that you possess. And I want to highlight in bold the dangers of these sort of empty investments in false idol worship. Now, it might be a complete joke, these candles, it might be a complete joke to have these holy water bottles in this way, but there's a little truth in every joke, isn't there? And whether you're seeing from one side or the other, I mean, both sides are very guilty of this. And seeing this, it's very disconcerting and it's a huge trap. So today we're going to dive in a little bit to how it's not just happening in the political spectrum, obviously, but let's talk about really the fundamentals of worship, of idol worship, of having devotion, and also, most importantly, recognizing how to be aware of these traps. So, thanks so much for joining me today. Let's go ahead and get started. So, every single person walking on this earth is a human, meaning that we all are imperfect. We all have limited scope for our perspectives, and we're only capable of so much. We are confined by this five sensory reality of time and space, being able to do only so much with what we have and who we are. Now, that being said, together we're capable of quite a lot. So, in looking at just trying to decipher, especially right now, 3 days before the election in America, we're trying to figure out how to connect with truth and how to understand how to sniff out things that are not accurate. There's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of intentionally propaganda based, uh, I'd say, I don't know, hijacking of the mind, I would say, out there, and with the specific intentions to sway towards this reality or that reality, or this vote or that vote. But let's kind of step back away from the political system because the energy is so charged right now, and make this more applicable to us personally, and then perhaps we'll be able to use those same principles in the more charged political or religious or familial spectrums of our lives. So first of all, I want you to know that I've put in the notes several oils, 4 oils, because we need a lot of help seeing through these false idols and being able to see really what we should be giving our devotion to in this life, that will help us the most and without entrapping us in these false promises. And one of the oils I highly, highly recommend is an oil called Clary Sage. If you can see that, Clary Sage. Clary Sage helps the sixth chakra, that center of intuition, the ability for us to connect with that higher seeing place so that we aren't so duped by the emotional sway of this or that. Because the emotional sways that are happening right now, on both ends of the political spectrum, but also just in the human experience of our emotions dictating rather than informing, can send us right into these traps where we begin to idolize these things that are very empty and hold promises that really do not fulfill us. So let's go into this savior archetype, this understanding of the savior archetype, and what the avoidance, these false idols, and what their avoidance really has, what we're avoiding with them. So the savior archetype is an incredible one, right? The savior archetype is tapping into your own ability to really pull that God energy through you and be intentional and impactful in this world, and being able to quite literally save other human beings who are really lost, who are really struggling. We have the capacity to reach out that hand, whether it's a literal or a metaphorical hand, and help our brothers and our sisters on this planet to be able to give them a lifeline to pull them out of wherever they're stuck, wherever they're drowning, literally or metaphorically. So the savior archetype and the light attribute of that is quite beautiful. The shadow archetype of this savior, the shadow aspect of the savior archetype is equally as detrimental. Whether we put this savior name on a political figure, or political figures, or even any human really, or any sort of substance. This is where addiction kind of gets in there. Whenever we project this idea of the savior onto something of this world, then we can get really entrapped by a blindedness. So that clarisage is super critical. And why do we fall into this trap? We fall into this trap because of dysfunctions related to our inner child. We hear this term in a lot of psychological circles, and also just understanding of the chakras, the second chakra being that inner child, that relationship to wanting guidance, protection. We're talking a lot about children these days because of the horrific reality that so many go missing every single day, every single year. And we're not protecting children in many ways, of giving them a supportive, reliable, secure environment in which to grow and explore, but inundating them with multi-layered reality of fear and insecurity. So with this inner child and how this relates to the savior archetype, is that inner child within us, and that's only what we can control. We can't control what everybody else is doing. That's why we get so frustrated, and why we get so in this sort of gerbil wheel repetition of just exhausting ourselves by trying to control everybody around us. So as we look at our own selves and that inner child within us, what is not healed within that inner child? What's the need of that inner child, or that desire of that inner child, that we must, as full grown adults, provide that inner child, so we don't slide into that trap of savior worship or idolization of something in this human experience. So that inner child is so critical. And I put another oil in there. If you guys have heard of this very weird name, ylang-ylang oil. It's Y-L-A-N-G, Y-L-A-N-G. I put it in the notes. This ylang-ylang oil is a wonderful oil to help give balance and security to that inner child. So use that every day right now. Put it on the lower belly, breathe it in, diffuse it. But it helps us get out of the dysfunctions that begin to sprout the addictions that we have. So when we look at the empty promises of these false idols, we cannot ignore the addictions that we have in our lives. The addictions, what we worship, without even realize we're really worshiping it. So what this is any sort of addiction in our lives. And we have them whether we attend anonymous groups or not. Every single human being has an addiction that traps them in this false idol worship. And it stems from an avoidance of intimacy. All of it stems from an avoidance of intimacy. That seems for some of you maybe like an oversimplification, but it is a true avoidance of intimacy. And that intimacy is either an intimacy with yourself, what you're feeling, what you're emoting, what discordance you're intuiting in your life, an avoidance of intimacy with reality, with what is, or with somebody else, with others. And most importantly, avoidance of an intimacy with God, with that ultimate loving source of oneness, of beautiful synchronicity and harmony, instead being trapped in that addiction to discordance, to uh, short-lived, superficial appeal and the pretense of security. So this can happen with money, with prestige, with fame, with sex, with food, with alcohol, with substances, the addiction to security, the addiction to any sort of egoic identification. And we have to recognize, if we're going to liberate ourselves from this, that that appeal is superficial. It is only short lived. When the addict takes that drink, it is a superficial avoidance of that reality. If we go out and we spend a bunch of money and have this sort of retail therapy, which I think is a really dangerous term, because it is an avoidance of reality. And these short lived avoidances will entrap us in a long term void where we feel empty, where we feel detached from the true source. So let's talk about something that I think really encapsulates this, and it's in the three major religions of our planet, in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, which is this commandment of thou shalt not have any other God except me. And we find this in the 10 Commandments in Judaism and Christianity. And we also find it in the 5 pillars of Islam, which these are the support for the structuring of these systems of beliefs, these three major religions in the world. So with Judaism, the saying goes in Exodus, which is, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me. And in Jewish faith, this really is an acknowledgement of deliverance and some sort of debt. Many Jews relate to this as that there's some sort of debt and they shouldn't forget it. Suggesting worship, suggesting that there's an indebtedness leading to a covenant that they must enter into to worship this God, this protector, this deliverer. And when we look at that, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage, and then you shall have no other gods before me. This does lend to this idea that there was a polytheistic reality at that time, but that there should not be any gods before that pure source of love, of light in this world. And in Christianity, the first line for this is typically more like a prologue to that second sentence of you shall have no gods before me. And in Islam, I think it's the Tawheed, it's the belief in oneness and unity, that Allah is the first of the 5 pillars of Islam, that oneness. And the Shahada is that idea of that this is the one thing that we should have leading the way, this light, this source of oneness, not this other worship of what the news is saying or what this political figure is saying or what this escapism or this teacher, even any teachers that are even of light, that they should not be worshipped, they should not be seen as the ultimate. And even the sun, like the pagan worship of the sun, we can honor things. We do not have to, and looking at this word worship, like worship is giving worth to. So in Matthew, I think it's really cool when we look at this what Jesus is quoted as saying when he was asked by a lawyer, like, which of all the scripture is the greatest? And he's quoted as saying, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. You shall love. He didn't use the word worship. He didn't say idol. He said love. So if we can remember right now, and this idea of really devoting ourselves, and I chose the oil sandalwood for devotion. It's the oil of sacred devotion, and even the oil of rose for divine love. If we can remember that being the focus, that being what we hold on that esteem, that being the beacon of light, that dangling carrot, is that love and that devotion, we really can find the way and the truth rather than getting sideswiped by dominating this group or idolizing this human or this very earthbound reality. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me. And feel free to share this. Know that I do one-on-one coaching, couples counseling, and channeling. And until next time, keep raising the vibration.